Hello, my name's Euan Crumley and welcome to the latest episode of the Athletics Weekly podcast. In each show, we bring you everything you need to know from the world of run, jump and throw, analysing the biggest stories and speaking to key names from the sport. We're just catching our breath in the lull between the completion of what's been an eventful indoor season and what lies next on the athletics calendar. The arrival of spring means two major marathons, Boston and London. They're on the way, while the outdoor track season is very nearly upon us too. As ever, there's lots to talk about, and to help me with that, I'm joined by AW Head of Digital Jason Henderson, and with road running about to step into the spotlight again, our resident running shoe guru, Paul Freary, who's also building up to his first taste of running the Boston Marathon, is here too. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Euan.
Place to start, I think, would be the indoor season that's just finished. We had two big championship events, the European Championships and the World Indoor Championships as well. The events themselves, went pretty well, but one of the big talking points was around those who didn't choose to compete almost as much as those who did. Jason, what did you make of the sort of the past couple of weeks of the indoors?
Well, I love the indoor athletics scene. It's really enjoyable. It's quite manageable. You haven't got quite as many events as you have outdoors, and you can kind of keep up to speed with everything. And the indoor arena is great. There's always a slightly better atmosphere than outdoors. The fact it's a small track and a small arena helps my aging eyesight a little bit as well. And I've always loved indoor. But then at the same time, we all know that by the time we get to July, August, the indoor season will be largely irrelevant. Nobody will hardly remember what happened. Outdoors is where it's all at, really. But while it's happening, indoors is a very nice distraction and gives the athletes a number of good goals to go for right in the middle of the winter, rather than just training the whole time.
Yeah, there was a few of the big names, as I mentioned, decided not to compete over the winter, but one who did, Paul, was Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and as he tends to do, won everything in sight. I think that's 17 European titles now when you take in the outdoors, the indoors and the cross country. He did the double as well, the world indoors, the 1500 and 3000. How much do you think he sort of enhanced his reputation this winter?
Well, a lot. I think the indoor season as a whole, it's very intense, very exciting, and it seems to come and go in a flash. And with the Europeans and the worlds being so close together, and a small sprinkling of meets in the US. It was fantastic. But yeah, his reputation is enhanced to all new levels. He doesn't dodge anybody. And I think even people that perhaps weren't the biggest fans can only grow to love him more because he puts himself on the line every time. And like in the Worlds, he was pushed close, but he's still hanging on. He's still producing the goods. And the season ahead is even going to be more exciting because of that. And I mean, it's straight into the Grand Slam this next weekend. So that's perhaps why one or two people avoided the Worlds. But it's, very exciting time. And it's all the better for having Ingebrigtsen in it, really.
Yeah, Jason, do you think he's becoming one of the greats as he's sort of enhancing that profile and heading into that kind of territory?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was trying to explain him the other day to one or two people who don't follow athletics too closely, and I basically described him as the Nike poster boy at the moment. I mean, he's got to be not one of Nike's biggest names, if not the biggest, just about. And I mean, he's huge. He hasn't always won these all of the Olympic and world titles that he's actually gone for in recent years, but I think most people would just about accept that he is the number one very generally, especially if you take into account world records that he's set, and his amazing record in Diamond League races as well, with fast races and pacemakers, which I guess kind of brings me on to my main observation about him during the indoor season is that he seems very comfortable winning what were largely quite slow tactical races. He had a lot of confidence in his kick, and he has been out-kicked, by other athletes, notably Cole Hocker, Jake Whiteman, Josh Kerr in major championships. But at the European indoors and world indoors, he was quite content to let things rumble along and then just control things in the latter stages, and then just win relatively slow races with a sprint finish, which I thought was quite notable.
Yeah, it was interesting speaking to Neil Gourley at the European indoors, and he was sort of saying the effect, Paul, that Jakob sort of has on the rest of the field, and that Jakob tends to, certainly at the Europeans, he sat at the back and then waited to pick his moment to just come charging right through, and the rest of the field know what's coming.
Yeah.
But it's they're left in this quandary of what to do about it, and there's panic as soon as he makes his move.
Yeah, and he's confident enough to sometimes, with 2 laps to go, 400 meters out, he might be 5 or 8 meters adrift of the lead, but he's plays it cool. It's quite amazing, really, and it's more amazing that they let him continue to get away with it every single time. Particularly on the indoors where they could make it hard for him to get round. They're saying it, there's an observation to it. They're saying it and doing it, of course. And these guys are on the track with him. But someone has got to, decide that he is beatable. And I guess they've really got to put a stake in the ground as to how they're going to go about doing that.
Yeah, I think part of what's fascinating about him as well, Jason, is the fact that there have been chinks in the armour. He doesn't always get it right. That there are, it just makes him so much more watchable as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he had the crack at the half marathon at the end of last season and just imploded. It wasn't pretty at all. He does have chinks. It's 6 years ago, Euan, that when we went to the World Cross in Aarhus. He ran there and he got thoroughly beaten by quite a few East African athletes. He is beatable. I think with the whole argument about being an all-time great, I think he's really got to take down those El Garouge world records. I think once that happens, then he can really start to come into the conversation. The longer those records stand, then it's quite difficult to call him the absolute all-time great at the mile and the 1500 meters. He's got to take down those, really, especially as he's running in superior footwear to the shoes that El Garouge wore 25, 26 years ago now.
Yeah, it feels like that's coming. It's almost an inevitability about it that he's going to get them at some point. In terms of the British team across the Europeans and the world indoors, Jeremiah Azu was probably the standout performer, given that he took both those titles. Jason, It's been an eventful time for him. He'd moved back from Italy back to Cardiff to his original coach. Seems to have been comfortable in coming home, and that sort of happiness, contentment showed in his performances.
Yeah, I mean, he's been one of the real success stories of the winter from a British athletics point of view. To win both of those titles was superb, and following in the footsteps of athletes like Richard Kilty and Dwayne Chambers, Jason Gardner. I think Britain has a real history of being very good over 60 metres. The trick now, of course, is to try and convert it to 100 metres, which not all 60-metre champions are able to do, although Jeremiah's shown good form in recent seasons over 100 metres, so I'd be fairly confident that he'll be able to run well over that slightly longer distance this summer.
Yeah, well, he said just after the championships that that his winning time was 6.49, would convert ideally into around about 9.8. So the British record at the moment is 9.83. Zarnell Hughes. Do you think that's under threat potentially again this year?
Well, if he's talking around it, isn't he? So he must be reasonably confident. Yes. So as they say, on a good day and a following wind, maybe an exciting summer ahead for him.
Yeah, well, it's an exciting. Well, in terms of British sprinting, on this men's side, in terms of the 100, you've got Louis Hinchliffe to come back into the picture as well, and Richard Kilty was at the European indoors and had said how excited he is about Louis' potential. He's coaching Louis, and you can read more about this in the April issue of AW magazine that's out now. But there's this sort of group of British male sprinters coming through who could, go toe for toe, put on quite a show potentially, provided everybody's fit and healthy, obviously.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how Louis Hinchcliffe handles this year and how he progresses, or if he progresses. I mean, he's obviously had a big coaching switch now from Carl Lewis to Richard Kilty. I love Richard Kilty. Richard Kilty's brilliant. I mean, you would struggle to find a more engaging character over the last 20, 30 years in British athletics. I mean, he's very charismatic, very experienced, great athlete himself. But Louis was with Carl Lewis. This is Carl Lewis, an absolute all-time great. So, I mean, that's a big decision to move from being coached by Carl Lewis, where things were going really well, to moving back to Britain and being coached by Richard Kilty. With our cold weather over here and everything else, that's a big call. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, certainly kudos to Hinchcliffe for having the balls to make a move like that. I mean, they say all great athletes are brave enough to actually make changes, and even when things are going well, they'll tweak things and change things, and they're always on this quest for improvement. So, fair play to him for actually making that move. But it is a gamble to me, to go from a coaching setup that was going so well to one which is kind of in unknown territory at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out this summer.
Yeah, and the other British gold medalist at the World Indoors was Amber Anning, who had a nightmare at the European Indoors. She'd looked so comfortable and quick in the heats, but was disqualified for stepping on the line. Paul, for her to bounce back and to win the 400 title, especially having to, there was a physical battle around that as well for her to get that title. That says a lot about her as well.
Yeah, the disqualification, I mean, regardless of it, she knows what kind of form she's in. She knows she's capable and what she's capable of, and shown that in the Worlds. And, the kind of last lap battles in 400, that's, only to, I mean, I guess it's a thing. Sprinters don't really prepare for that in training, do they? They'll tend to do most of the sessions in lanes, but they are aware that there is going to be a little bit of tussle, shall we say? So yeah, it was a great performance. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. As Catherine Merry writes in her column in the next issue of AW, the 400 indoors is just a completely different event compared to outdoors. It's down to 2 laps. You've got to get to the break, as they call it, after the first lap ahead. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to get past anyone. And there's that physical element, as Paul said, of potentially having to pass someone who's in front of you when normally you're used to just a lane all by yourself.
Yeah, it is terrific, because I think the majority of winners in a 400-meter race indoors, they have to be leading at the bell, really. It gives them such an advantage to be in pole position at the bell. So you have this massive scrap between the athletes to get to the bell in the lead. But of course, in the back of their mind, they're always thinking if they go too fast, then that second lap is going to be so painful. You're right, Euan. I mean, it is one of the most exciting events in indoor athletics. And, it also reminds me a little bit of when 400-meter hurdles was tried indoors a few years ago. I can't remember exactly which year. It was in Birmingham at the annual indoor meeting in Birmingham that we used to have. And it was a tremendous race, ridiculously exciting, because the athletes broke from their lanes and they were going over hurdles as well. And it was chaos, but it was chaos in a good way. And I think World Athletics have recently announced that they're making the 300-meter hurdles outdoors an official event, but I think they should make the 400 meters indoors an official event. I think that would go down a storm with people.
Well, we'll see what lies in store for the next indoor season next winter. But right now, obviously, spring is in the air. You can't help but notice there are more and more runners out on the streets at the moment, and that's because spring marathon season is upon us. So that means Boston and London are Coming up very quickly on the calendar. Paul, you're
And
about to head
Manchester.
out to Boston.
Yeah, I am. But being based up here in the Northwest, we've got Manchester Marathon as well on the same day as London. So, there'll be 35 plus thousand in that. So we've potentially got the biggest running day ever on that Sunday with, just getting on for, what's that, 80, possibly 90,000 people running a marathon in the UK on the same day with London and Manchester.
Yeah, it's
So,
amazing.
yeah, busy old time for marathon. Yeah, I did Tokyo. Tokyo and Boston, two close together ones. They just came together by chance, really. I wouldn't have ideally been running two marathons so closely together, but the opportunity arose to do them both and clinch the 6-star medal as well. So that's what I'm doing. Tokyo, like many people, I struggled a little bit. The weather took an unexpected turn, really. Very cool at the start, quickly getting very warm. And for me, I think in the second half, really, it was probably on reflection, I was dehydrated. But when you're running on a cool day, you don't worry about drink stations. And the drink stations were paper cups with only half full, a third full at best. So I hadn't taken a lot of water on. I was kind of cruising along relatively comfortable, but from 19 miles, I knew I was fading a little bit, and by 20, I reached 20 in just under 2 hours. So I was on my target pace, but from then on in, I was dehydrated, but there's nothing I could do about it. It's like you've got to. It's not like you can fill up the fuel tank again. It's like I had a hole in the fuel tank and everything was gone and it was going, So struggled home, shall we say, in 2:51. So that's behind us now. A lot of people struggled. I mean, I spoke to Paula Radcliffe, similarly struggled in the latter stages. Dehydration or the fuel stations was a little bit of an issue for her, as she mentions in her interview that's also on the channel. And also Jake Barraclough, the guy ran to Japan. Got an interview coming up, should be live on the AW channel by the time this podcast goes live. So check that one out. But he also struggled in the latter stages of the race as well. All eyes on Boston now. You've done Boston, Euan, and you know what the hills are like. And I think I'm kind of hoping that it's a lot of talk about the hills, really. I mean, I run on hills and hilly routes most days, and all my long runs are on hilly courses. So I'm hoping it isn't too bad, but I'm adjusting my strategy. I'm looking for a slower first half, which is downhill, and I'm hoping to run my first negative split in a marathon. So I think I've only my first marathon I did that by 1 second. But very even, but I'm hoping to do that and come home. I think I've got to be sensible and readjust my goals a little bit. I was hoping for 2:40. Tokyo didn't turn out. I've had a cold in the intervening period between Tokyo and Boston, so I'll kind of look around 2:45. When you look on when you're doing the 6-star World Marathon Majors, it gives you. It tells you how many you've done, and it gives you an average. And I'm on 2:45 average over a 25-year span now. 2:44 average, sorry. So 2:44 would be nice to finish. 25 years of running 2:44 would be good.
That's a decent chunk of marathon running at pace.
Well, it's not that. I think it'll be my 14th marathon in total. So I'm by no means a marathon runner. I still don't classify myself as a marathon runner. I think for me, it just gives me something to focus on. The training over a 3-4 month period. But yeah, going after Boston, I think I'll come back down a distance.
Well, one of the things I love about Boston is that the course is almost the star of the show. And that to those not familiar with the event, you get bussed out basically 26.2 miles away from Boston and then run back into town. through a number of different sort of towns and villages. It's fantastic. And as Paul has mentioned, the first half is largely downhill. And then from about 17 miles in, you hit the 7 hills, they call them, on the way back up into town, which are testing, to say the least. But they can catch a number of people out. So, I mean, in terms of this year's elite race, last year's champion, Cisse Lema, looked like he was on course to absolutely destroy the course record last year. And then with about sort of 5k to go, I think he said, he admitted himself, it was because he'd hit the first half far too hard, and that the running downhill really, really sort of caught up with him. And on the women's side, we've got Helen Obiri going for her third Boston marathon, and I'm not sure, Jason, it's much of a surprise that someone who is so good across events like cross country as well excels on a course where, you know, hills come into play, but it's not just all about sheer pace.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if you've trained on hills a lot, then it sounds like it would certainly help on a course like this. I think Paul's along the right lines to have trained on hills a lot, and is now heading to a course that's famous for its hills in the latter stages. The one thing that strikes me though is that Paul can run 2:51 in Tokyo and be disappointed.
Well, you know, yeah, that's part of it. I was really disappointed, to be honest. I thought I'd done more long runs. I was faster at 5k prior to the marathon. A month or so before the marathon, I'd run a very fast 5k. I always feel like I need to put in brackets age related. For my age, I'm 57 this week. So I'd ran 16:20. I'd never been in that kind of shape going into a marathon before, but at the same time, I'd done some good long runs as well. So I think I was being realistic, thinking, you know, I could run 2:40. And on reflection now, I'm kind of looking at Boston, thinking, get Boston out of the way, and maybe do another marathon. I don't know if I'll do one in the autumn or next spring. Perhaps autumn marathons are better for me. I didn't enjoy training through the winter, to be honest. But last year I did Manchester in the spring, didn't go very well. But my last 2 Berlins did go well in the autumn. So I think there are probably more. There's runners that enjoy running in the cold and in the warmer weather. And I must, despite struggling in the heat in Tokyo, training in the warmth is something that I do enjoy. So we'll see.
London's a very different prospect to that, to Boston. London's obviously it's a quicker route. There's never a quiet bit on it. But in terms of the fields that have been put together for this year's race, Jason, is the 45th staging of it. The organisers really have pulled out all the stops on the men's, the women's, and the wheelchair side as well.
Yeah, great fields as usual. I mean, we seem to say this every year with London, but they obviously have an enormous budget, and they just attract the best runners in the world. Obviously, the attraction of the race itself draws in all the great runners. I mean, there's so many names to mention who are doing this year's race, but I think one interesting character is the cover star for our latest magazine, Alex Yee. Who's better known as being a triathlete, although he did obviously start life as a runner, very good teenage runner, won the British 10,000 metre title at the night of the 10,000 PBs, and it'll be really fascinating to see how he goes over 26 miles in London. But yeah, that's going to be a great day, April 27th, and as we were mentioning earlier on, there's so many big spring marathons, Boston and Manchester and Brighton as well in the UK, and Rotterdam, and the list is endless. But obviously London is no doubt the biggest of all, and certainly got the greatest field. So yeah, it should be terrific.
Yeah, there's another interesting character to watch, I think, Paul, and Jakob Kiplimo making his marathon debut. He's obviously absolutely destroyed the half marathon world record earlier this year.
Yeah.
And people are starting to get very excited. We might have found the man who's going to break 2 hours in a under normal marathon conditions. Eliud Kipchoge obviously did his 1:59 with the controlled experiment. But do you think that's a realistic goal for someone like Jakob Kiplimo?
I think it is a realistic goal. It's can it be done on your first marathon? And it's like Jason mentioned, Ingebrigtsen doing the half marathon last year and blowing up a little bit. I think it's a little bit different for Kiplimo, but Ingebrigtsen certainly attacked it. He didn't go to run 65 minutes and blow up. He had a go. No, I think it just depends. Certainly, what the pacers are. Will the pacers go out on 2 hour pace? They'll announce that a couple of days before what's happening, and if they do, how many people are going to go with that pace? If they do say pacers are going out bang on 2 hour pace, the rest of the field are thinking this is set up for a sub 2 for Kiplimo. But one or two of the more experienced guys will think, well, I don't think that's going to happen, and he's going to blow. But they've kind of got to be near enough to take him down, should that arise. So a bit very interesting. All the pace calculators would suggest that it's doable for him with that PB.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, somebody going off at that pace, potentially, it does kind of cause chaos. It causes a number of the runners to think about what they're doing to adjust their own plans, or whether to adjust their own plans and and to stick with what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I think when we hear the actual pacing plans on the eve of the race, because I think there's always a meeting with the athletes and the athlete management and pacemakers and everybody just before the race. I think it'll be very interesting to hear that news come out, to see what kind of pace they're gonna all run at. And there's a lot of expectation over Jakob Kiplimo now, but not all good half marathon runners end up running brilliant marathons. I remember a few years ago there was an Eritrean runner called Zesene Tedesse, who won the world cross country title, and he set a world record in the half marathon as well. And there was a lot of expectation with him moving up to the marathon, but he just didn't really do it over the marathon. He just blew up in the latter stages. I think he had a few attempts and just didn't really do it. And then more recently, we've seen Joshua Cheptegei, world record holder at 5,000, 10,000 meters on the track, massively anticipated marathon debut, hasn't really done the business, so it doesn't always translate. So yeah, I mean, that's part of why everybody will be glued to the race on April 27th to see exactly what happens.
Yeah, and another aspect of it, Jason, is at the other end of the marathon experience scale, we've got Kenenisa Bekele and Eliud Kipchoge in the field as well. Obviously, Bekele, there was nearly a fairy tale for him at London last year. This is really a point where we need to sort of keep appreciating any appearances these guys put in, because there can't be that many more left.
No, the old guard. Yeah, they've got quite a few years and quite a few marathons between them now. But yeah, I mean, who knows? They might have one. This might be the last hurrah for one of them. They could cause a shock yet. I mean, they've certainly got the talent, and they've got a few blips on their respective resumes in the last 2 or 3 years. But on their day, they can still produce it. So I wouldn't rule them out entirely.
Yeah, and Paul, on the women's side, we've got so many fast runners. We've got the world record holder Ruth Chepngetich. There's Sifan Hassan. There's Tigist Assefa. Perez Jepchirchir set the course record last year. It could be absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, it will be. And often when it's on the TV, although I think in recent years you've been able to watch different streams. You're often thinking, well, what's going on in the men's race? What's going on in the women's race? We really could have just two races, 2.5 hour programs here. Such how exciting it's going to be. And with Hassan as well, they are exciting races. You never know what's going to happen, really. The last time she ran London, she came back to win it after going back for the water station and all that. And then we had the finishing sprint kind of battle and the bit of elbow in like the 400 meters on the indoors in Paris. So fantastic races. So when the women's race, does it start about 15 or 20 minutes before the men's usually? The finish line, I mean, it's going to be a very exciting final 30 minutes on TV watching both those finishes, isn't it?
Yeah, and whenever there's a marathon these days, or whenever there's a marathon performance of note particularly, we always go and bang on about the shoes. Paul, this is obviously your area of expertise as well. How much has the footwear developed even since the autumn that we've seen? Have there been many big changes we should look out for?
There's a few. Nike have kind of developed their shoe, the Vaporfly, a little bit. And interestingly, it's come down in overall stack a few millimeters, but it's much lighter. But much of the same, really. And I think it's more tweaks and slight developments from different brands. Puma have got a very exciting new model coming out in the next couple of weeks, certainly pre-London and pre-Boston. So that will be very good to see. That's super lightweight, much softer than their previous high-end carbon-plated aggressive shoe. So that's an exciting one. Tracksmith have got a new shoe, not a shoe that you might have seen too much at the front end of marathons lately, but a new concept in how they've made it. I've got one here, which isn't much use for viewers for listeners to the podcast, but if you're watching the YouTube, essentially made in two main components. So you've got half of the cushioning into the base of the shoe and half in a removable insole. So it's a weight reduction thing and putting the foot much closer to the shoe, reducing layers of glues and adhesives and what have you. So a lot of tweaks and developments in footwear. And of course, to most people, it's how they perform in the big races and get on those podiums that plays a big part of it. So again, an exciting time.
Yeah, and the athletes have got to be in decent shape to be able to take advantage of these.
They do. I'm sitting in here in my shop and I've got lots of shoes on the wall there. And right now they're all going the same speed as I tell a lot of people on a busy Saturday when they're looking for a shoe for the next marathon. My friend's got this one. My friend's got that one. At the moment, they're all going the same. It's the legs that are going to do most of the work.
And Jason, just to round off, when we start looking ahead to the track season ahead is almost upon us as well, and that's the first sort of. We've had obviously some big events in Australia, but there'll be a lot of eyes on Kingston in Jamaica and the Grand Slam track, the first event of the first slam, I should say, of the series. We've written a lot about it. We've talked a lot about it. How much are you looking forward to seeing that getting going, and how sort of curious are you to see how this format works out?
Yeah, at last, it seems like we've been talking about Grand Slam track for a long time, and it's finally here. So, yeah, it's the long wait is over. We'll actually see if it delivers and what it's like. And yeah, it's going to be a really long summer, isn't it? Because we've got the action starts in April and really gets going at quite some speed and rumbles all the way through to the World Championships in September. So it's going to be a long summer year, but very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. And Paul, what do you think of the sort of the Grand Slam concept and what they're trying to do with it?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. As is everybody else, to basically just see how the races pan out, particularly in the middle distances. Are they going to be tactical affairs, or is we've got like a Rop doing the 8:15 combo? Is he going to take the 8 out? There's lots of scenarios ways that this can play out. So yeah, can't wait to get stuck in this weekend.
Well, thank you both very much for joining me. We'll be back next month for more from the Athletics Weekly podcast. In the meantime, as mentioned, the April issue of AW Magazine is out now, available via athleticsweekly.com or selected retailers. You can also keep right up to date with the latest athletics news and all of the goings on at Grand Slam track and during marathon season by heading to athleticsweekly.com and following the AW social media channels. Finally, please like and subscribe to the AW podcast on your usual podcast platform. See you next time.